It all started with something so simple. My favorite cafe, a place I went every day after work to unwind. I never thought a mundane part of my routine would end with me writing these words, hoping I never run into that man again. I should start from the beginning. I work a pretty regular office job, 9 to 5, emails, meetings, the usual. Nothing exciting, nothing dangerous. Every day after work, I'd head to this small, cozy cafe a couple of blocks away. The baristas knew me by name, and the ambiance was perfect for some quiet reading or catching up on a bit of work. It was peaceful, predictable, safe. One evening, as I sat by the window with a cappuccino in hand and a book in front of me, I noticed him. A man, mid-40s maybe, with thinning hair and a gray hoodie, sitting at a table across the room. He didn't stand out much at first, but something about the way he kept looking over at me, only to avert his gaze when I glanced back, put me on edge. His eyes darted quickly, nervously, yet there was an intensity to them when they lingered just a little too long. I brushed it off. People stare sometimes, right? No big deal. I chalked it up to paranoia and returned to my book, determined to ignore the weird feeling crawling up my spine. The next day, though, there he was again, sitting in the same spot. He didn't order anything, just sat there, staring off into space. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the odd feeling from the previous day came back, stronger this time. After an hour of awkwardly trying to act normal, I finished my coffee and left. 2 days passed without incident. I started to relax, thinking maybe he was just someone who happened to visit the cafe at the same time. Maybe he wasn't even looking at me. I was probably just imagining things. But on the third day, I noticed him again. This time, it was more than just the cafe. As I walked to the bus stop after work, I glanced behind me and saw him. He was half a block away, not too close to arouse suspicion, but close enough that it didn't feel like a coincidence. I told myself it was just a fluke. Maybe he worked around here too. Maybe he lived nearby. It didn't have to mean anything, except it kept happening. Every time I left work, there he was, always at a distance, never getting too close. It felt like a game of cat and mouse. I'd speed up my pace, take random turns, even duck into a store once just to see if he'd follow. And he did. My heart would pound in my chest, and I'd tell myself it was just nerves, just my imagination. But deep down, I knew. I could feel it. He was watching me, following me, for reasons I couldn't understand. It got worse when I started seeing him outside of work. Once, while I was grocery shopping late in the evening, I spotted him at the end of an aisle, staring blankly at the shelves, not buying anything, just there. He wasn't holding a cart or a basket, just standing there, like he had nowhere else to be. I left my groceries in the store and hurried home. Then came the night I'll never forget. It had been a week of this. I stopped going to the cafe, started taking different routes home, sometimes even getting off at different bus stops just to throw him off. But no matter what I did, he always seemed to know where I was. That night, I stayed late at work, hoping he wouldn't expect it. When I finally left, the streets were dark and empty. The usual bustle of the city had faded into a quiet hum, and I almost believed I was safe. Almost. About halfway to my apartment, I felt it again. The hairs on the back of my neck standing up. The unmistakable feeling of being watched. I glanced over my shoulder and there he was, half hidden in the shadows, just behind a lamppost. Too close this time, too deliberate. I started walking faster, the sound of my own footsteps blending with the steady pounding of my heartbeat. But so did he. His footsteps were quiet, but I could hear them now, matching my pace. I broke into a jog, then a full run, my bag bouncing against my side as I tore down the street toward home. I didn't stop until I was inside my building, slamming the door shut behind me and locking it, gasping for air. I pressed my ear to the door, trying to hear any sign of him, but there was nothing, just silence. For the next hour, I sat on the floor of my apartment trying to calm myself down. I called a friend, not telling her the full story, just that I was freaked out about some random guy, and we talked for a while. Her voice helped soothe the panic inside me. I almost convinced myself I had imagined it all. Then, just as I was about to head to bed, I heard it. The unmistakable sound of footsteps in the hallway outside my apartment. Slow, deliberate, almost hesitant. My heart raced again, and I stood frozen in place, straining to hear. The footsteps stopped right outside my door. I crept over and peered through the peephole, barely daring to breathe. And there he was. He was standing just outside my door, staring directly at it, his eyes wide and unblinking. He didn't move, didn't knock, just stood there like he was waiting for something. For what felt like hours, he didn't budge. I stood there too, petrified, unsure of what to do. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, he turned and walked away down the hall, disappearing into the stairwell. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I called the police. They didn't seem to take me too seriously at first. I didn't have any evidence, no camera footage, no solid proof. But I was persistent, and eventually, they agreed to file a report. They said they'd patrol the area, keep an eye out. But I could tell they didn't think much of it. Over the next few days, I didn't see him again. But I couldn't shake the feeling that he was still out there, still watching, waiting for the right moment. Every creak in my apartment, every rustle of leaves outside my window sent my heart racing. It's been months now, and I haven't seen him since. But sometimes, when I'm walking home late at night, I swear I catch a glimpse of someone in the shadows.